Welcome back to Whispers from the Wizarding World. In this part, the story looks backward, into forgotten rooms, abandoned memories, and truths that were never meant to surface again. Some histories are hidden for a reason, not because they are false, but because they are too real. Settle in and listen carefully.
Story 8. The Last Memory in the Pensieve. Professor Reginald Blackwell had been teaching history of magic at Hogwarts for 30 years. He was nearing retirement age, thinking about what he'd do with his remaining years, when he discovered the Pensieve in the abandoned classroom on the 6th floor. The room hadn't been used in decades, sealed off after some incident that wasn't clearly documented. But Professor Blackwell had been researching the history of Hogwarts itself, writing a comprehensive volume about the castle's many secrets, and he'd obtained permission to explore restricted areas. The Pensieve was hidden in a cabinet, covered in dust, clearly forgotten. It was old, perhaps medieval, judging by its design, and made of stone rather than the more modern metal versions. The basin was filled with a silvery substance, memories waiting to be viewed. Professor Blackwell knew he should report the find to Headmistress McGonagall, should let the proper authorities determine what to do with these unknown memories. But curiosity overcame caution. After all, he was a historian. Understanding the past was his profession. What harm could there be in viewing what was stored here? He leaned forward, his face breaking the surface of the silvery liquid, and fell into the memory. He found himself in this same room, but centuries earlier. The furnishings were different, the walls freshly painted, and there were students, perhaps a dozen of them, all wearing robes of a style from 400 or 500 years ago. At the front of the room stood a wizard that Professor Blackwell recognized from portraits. Salazar Slytherin himself, one of Hogwarts' 4 founders. He was younger than in most depictions, perhaps only 40 or 50 years old, and he was teaching something that made Professor Blackwell's blood run cold. The key to blood magic, Slytherin was saying, is understanding that magic is inherited, passed down through families like any other trait. Pure-blood wizards have magic that's concentrated, powerful, refined by generations of magical breeding. Half-bloods dilute that power, and Muggleborns, well, their magic is an aberration, a mistake. The students were listening raptly, some taking notes. These weren't students from other houses being taught against their will. These were young Slytherins, learning from their house's founder directly. Today, Slytherin continued, I'm going to teach you how to test magical purity. It's a spell I've developed, one that reads the bloodline, shows the strength and quality of one's magical inheritance. The spell is complex and requires material components, but I'll demonstrate. He gestured, and a figure was brought into the room, a young girl, perhaps 11 or 12, bound and gagged. Her eyes were wide with terror. Professor Blackwell tried to look away, to pull himself out of the memory, but he was locked in, unable to control his viewing perspective. He was forced to watch as Slytherin performed his demonstration. The spell was brutal, painful, and involved drawing blood from the girl while speaking incantations that made Professor Blackwell's ears hurt even through the filter of memory. The girl screamed behind her gag, and slithering students watched with a mixture of fascination and discomfort. The spell's result was a glowing symbol that appeared above the girl's head, complicated, multi-layered, showing her entire magical lineage. Slytherin pointed out various features, explaining what they meant, how to read the subtle indicators of blood purity. But now Slytherin said when the lesson was complete, we must dispose of the subject. We can't have Muggle-born children running about telling tales about Hogwarts curriculum. Mr. Gaunt, would you like to try the killing curse we discussed last week? Professor Blackwell watched in horror as one of the students, a boy of perhaps 15, stepped forward and cast Avada. The green light, that terrible green light, struck the girl, and she went limp in her bindings. Excellent execution, Slytherin said, approvingly. Clean, quick, proper wand movement. 10 points to... The memory shifted, and Professor Blackwell found himself in a different scene but the same room. Slytherin was older now, perhaps 70, and he was alone. He was adding this very memory to the Pensieve, speaking as he worked. I know what the others will do when I leave, he was saying. Rowena, Gotrek, Helgavel paint me as a villain. They'll say I was mad, that my views on blood purity were extremism rather than common sense. They'll remove my teaching from the curriculum, scrub away evidence of what I truly accomplished here. He paused, looking into the Pensieve with satisfaction. But I leave this behind as proof. Proof of what I taught, what I believed, what I created. Someday, someone will find these memories, will understand that I was right, that magical bloodlines must be preserved, protected, kept pure, and perhaps that person will continue my work. The memory ended abruptly, and Professor Blackwell found himself back in the abandoned classroom, gasping for breath, his face wet from the Pensieve's surface. He staggered back, his mind reeling. What he'd just witnessed was evidence of crimes committed centuries ago, nor torture, the corruption of students into participating in dark magic. But more than that, it was a window into the true nature of Hogwarts' founding, into secrets that had been deliberately hidden. Professor Blackwell knew he should destroy the memories, should ensure that no one else ever saw what he'd seen, that Slytherin's evil vision remained buried in the past where it belonged. But the historian in him rebelled at destroying primary sources, at erasing evidence, no matter how uncomfortable. He spent days agonizing over the decision. He reviewed the memory multiple times, each viewing more horrifying than the last. He researched Slytherin's departure from Hogwarts, his falling out with the other founders, and found that the official histories were sanitized, edited to be less disturbing than the truth. Finally, Professor Blackwell brought the Pensieve to Headmistress McGonagall. He showed her the memories, watched her face go pale with horror, and then asked what should be done. Destroy it, McGonagall said immediately. Destroy it, and never speak of it again. But the historical significance is outweighed by the danger, McGonagall interrupted. Sometimes, Professor, the truth does more harm than good. She sealed the memories instead, locking them away in gringotts, preserved but inaccessible. Professor Blackwell retired years later, never speaking of what he had seen. And though he lived a quiet life, the memory never left him. Some truths once discovered can never truly be buried.
This brings us to the end of this series. You've reached the final chapter of Whispers from the Wizarding World. 8 stories drawn from the darker corners of magic, memory, and forgotten truths. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. For listening. For wandering these shadows together. This story closes the archive for now, but the world of storytelling never truly ends. New tales will come, different worlds, different mysteries. Until then, take care, and I hope to see you again in another story.